ask you something. Is HubSpot as culturally excellent as you hear as a corporate place to work?
Yeah. And I'm not just saying that because they're in the Boston area and some higher up at HubSpot may be hearing this. I genuinely love working there. I read a lot of like the reviews and the culture code before I interviewed at HubSpot. And I believe it was in my first interview with either the hiring manager or the HR person who I was speaking with, where I said, I hear so much and I've read so much about HubSpot being this amazing community to work with. How accurate is that? Is that something you've experienced? And they said, yeah, it is. And now that I've been on the inside for a while, no organization is perfect. We have our flaws, but it's always been super welcoming and encouraging. And it's been an opportunity for me to really lean into the things that I had no knowledge about. If it wasn't for HubSpot, I would know nothing about front-end development or managing a website or doing what I'm getting ready to do and taking a product to market.
Cool. I love hearing that, Dr. Joe. I love hearing stories where corporations are having a tremendous amount of success keeping their teams happy.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean,
Yeah.
that's part of what you're doing, Mark, at Styles Law as well.
Yeah.
Creating a community where there's the opportunity to grow, the opportunity to learn, but always the opportunity to feel valued. And that's really what it's all about. When you feel valued, you can do anything, because that respect leads to value, leads to trust. That allows you to do so much. And that's the amazing community that we have with our sponsors, who have created a situation for us where we feel so valuable. So Ben, let's return that sense of value and let's take a commercial break. We'll be right back with the Dr. Joe Show.
And we are back with Blake Reichenbach. We're back. We're back. Again, talking about some really cool stuff.
I love it when I get Mark, because sometimes Mark's enunciation is so Bostonian. People think that he's making a mistake, and it's not. It's just the Bostonian way of saying things. So we are
or I'm making a mistake and I'm fudging my way through it. How's that?
Either way, it's endearing. So Blake, we were talking off air a little bit about curiosity and how that really just started in your life. Can you tell us a little bit about your home domain and the background that maybe drew this out of you?
Absolutely. So I'm a big advocate in self-reflection and journaling. And so a lot of this is stuff that I've put the pieces together over time as I've looked back and reflected on when were times that I felt valued, but also could tell that I was pushing myself and able to achieve more than I would usually expect. And when I think through those things, two particular times in my life really stand out to me. The first was the summer of 2015. I received a grant to go do a summer study program at the University of Oxford in Oxford, England.
Wow.
And then last year in February, I got to go do a writing retreat that was hosted at the home of the author Sam Horn. And she is amazing. Her book, Someday Is Not a Day in the Week, it's a must read if you haven't read it. But in both of those instances, something really transformative happened. And, thinking about Oxford in particular, for example, my inclination while I was there was, I'm doing these things because it's Oxford. It's just the atmosphere. It's, we're all nerds. It's just what happens. You come here, you research, you write. It's a grand old time. But looking back on it, what I now realize is it's not just an atmosphere. It's not just an environment. I was there with people who were excited about the same things that I was excited by. And, as an undergrad, when I would show up to parties and sit down my beer and say, hey, have you heard of eco-critical theory? The party shut down. People would find an excuse to go elsewhere, and I would be standing there looking for whatever dog or cat was at the house party. At the University of Oxford, I could say, oh, I read this really cool article about eco-critical theory, and someone else could go, oh, I read that same article. What did you think?
Love it.
Right? And so it became a dialogue rather than why is the tall kid just sitting in the corner petting the dog? And the same thing was really true with the writing retreat that was hosted by Sam Horn. I was there with people who, when I read their bios and looked at their LinkedIn profiles before getting there, I thought, oh, I'm out of my depth. These are people who are accomplished. These are people who are so successful. One of the ladies who was there is on like a first name basis with Madeleine Albright. And I was like, I'm a nobody from Kentucky. But when I got there, I was in a room full of curious, kind people who were enthusiastic about writing. And so when we sat down and spoke, same thing that happened when I was at Oxford. We could share that excitement. We could go in depth. We could ask each other questions. We could engage. And it really challenged us to build upon and expand upon anything that we had previously limited ourselves to. And so for me, those are the events and those are the experiences that make me say more people need to have those experiences. If someone's thinking like, I want to start a crochet business selling crocheted wall decor, and they go to their friends and say, hey, I'm super excited about this, I'm buying all this yarn, and their friends say, okay, that motivation might fizzle out. If they go to someone else who's started a crafting business, that other person might be able to say, oh, that's amazing. Where are you getting your yarn from? Have you looked at eco-friendly yarn? So on and so forth. And that motivation sustains. It doesn't fizzle out.
So that's a really, really interesting idea, that the community in which you present an idea needs to be a receptive one. But let me just throw this out. What happens when it's not? Does the idea need to fizzle out, or can you help people just be just as enthusiastic? They just were talking to the wrong person.
It's fun. It's funny you say that, if I could just interject, because I was
Sure,
thinking
please.
when Blake said, you say this to your friends and they're like, meh. What about 90% of the people that don't do that? Don't do that. That's
Yeah,
I wouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. Don't do that.
right.
But
Right, which is another intensity of it. Instead of just saying, yeah, it's like, no, don't go there.
don't.
So you're going to probably run across people who've experienced that in their life when you're doing How to Curiosity. That's why they're going to be coming to you, so that they don't have to endure that. But what advice can you give them?
So that's another reason, the advice that I would give to that's another reason why I lean so heavily into curiosity.
Mm.
The author Liz Gilbert, who is someone I essentially worship. The last time I was in Boston, actually, was because I convinced HubSpot to fly me in for a conference because Liz Gilbert was going to be at that conference, and I wanted to shake her hand, and I did. She's the author of Eat, Pray, Love. She's also the author of Big Magic, which is how I, fell in love with her work. But one of the things that she discusses a lot in Big Magic, and that has been really influential for me, is, this idea that fear and curiosity really help balance each other out. And curiosity is a great tool when you're faced with those moments of fear. And I think if you are excited about something, if you're interested in something and want to explore it deeper, when you have those outside voices that are telling you like that's not worth doing, or they just don't care, and you start to feel isolated and doubt yourself, that's a form of fear. And often when we start to get into that fearful place, our intentions, rather than being, this excites me, so I'm going to explore it, we start thinking like, well, something might not ever come out of this. It's a waste of time. It's pointless. But I don't think we have to take that mindset. I think we can give ourselves permission to be curious about these things and say, so what if nothing ever comes out of this? I love it. And I want to get better at this. I want to do more of this. You know, when I started writing my website, there are a million, that's not even a large enough number. There are so many blogs out there. Seems like every day someone's launching a new blog, spinning up a new blog. The idea that nobody would ever read my work, nobody would ever care, was totally evident to me. I knew that going into it. But I also knew that writing and researching really brought me a lot of joy and gave me a sense of accomplishment. And it wasn't something I was getting from my day job. So I wanted to be curious about it, and I wanted to do it anyway. And regardless of, you know, if it ever took off, if I ever made a dime from it, or if I lost hundreds, you know, I was still doing something I was curious about. And that's valuable enough to explore.
And you're still writing, right? I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
and how do you find the discipline to do that, to have your day job and yet continue to pursue this wonderful, wonderful experience?
So for me, that's been a bit of a process of redefining leisure, because for a long time I looked at it like, oh, that's 2 jobs. I'm never going to rest. I don't know if that's what I want. But then again, when I stepped back and reframed it, it's like, well, why did I want to start writing in the first place? Because I enjoy it, because it's fun, because I love the creative process. I love the generative process of spinning out something that wasn't there previously. And so for me, really taking a step back and saying, you know, I'm not working myself to the bone. I'm putting effort into something that I love and that I get a sense of reward from. So, you know, sure, could I spend more time sitting on my couch, reading a book, playing with my dog? Yeah, but I find it rewarding. So I prioritize it and I put energy there.
Yeah, so it doesn't feel like a job. It feels like joy. You get joy out of it.
Exactly.
And and that's, you know, one of my phrases is, you know, success is when you love going to work and love going home. And right now, it sounds like you get to do both at the same time, right? Being at home, loving it, and enjoying everything that you're doing. That that is so important. And that's part of what the I am is also about. You know, remember the I am approach, the idea that we're always doing the best we can. So even for those people where you got the idea about crocheting, if somebody else says, yeah, you know, great, that's the best they can do. It's not a reflection on you. It's just that it hasn't resonated and appealed to them, but that doesn't mean that it will not appeal or resonate with anyone. You will find that community where people say, this is the best idea I've ever heard. That happens. That happens all the time because there's so many people out there. And it happens with us frequently. As a matter of fact, it happens at least 3 times every show where we get to resonate with people who really believe in us and what we're doing. And those are our sponsors. So let's take a commercial break and we'll be back with the Dr. Joe Show and Blake Reichenbach.
Stretch the canvas, rush with madness. Is it sadness or just a show that